Hello, friends, and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz, and I'm back with another Quick Card Monday. It's been a minute since I did one of these, but this is just about sitting down, making some cards that aren't too complicated, and enjoying the process. This is the Love from Lizzie Easter card kit. I know it's not Easter. We're not making Easter cards. There is tons of great product in this kit that is great for year-round, spring, summer especially. And so I have a card base here that I actually cut down. There were some square card bases in the kit, but I don't really make square cards. That's a weird shape for me. So this is almost 5.5 by almost 4.25. And I just put some of the pattern paper on there that I really love. The color palette is beautiful. And then if you're not familiar with Love from Lizzie, she has these peel off stickers. And so these are like a glossy purple and they come in a couple of widths all on that same sheet. And I am just running that right along the edge of my paper. I'm actually going to trim off a lot here that isn't really usable, but I'll do better on the next one. I promise. I've been wanting to try these peel-offs for a long time. And I tell you what, they're as great as I hoped they would be. So on this next one, I'm going to work hard to put very little at one end. See that? We're not going to waste much at all there. And then when I trim this off, there's actually enough left to use what's left over on another card. I'll just clip it and then I'll stick it right back on the sticker sheet. In case you're interested, I'm going to link to my unboxing for the kit. Guys, that paper. Anyway, you'll have to forgive me because in the unboxing, I keep calling it the May card kit. There is a May card kit and it's masculine themed and it's amazing. And that's what I was told they were sending me. I didn't know it was masculine themed. But this is not. This is a special edition kit. And I love it. There are tons of cut aparts. The paper, for the most part, is 8 by 8. So I've been looking for ways to use the cut aparts. Like this sentiment is a cut apart. Those florals are a cut apart. I'm just going to stack that up and make it a little thicker. But I also wanted to get the most out of my paper. So that's why I'm using the peel offs on the edges, right? Because if I cut a 4.25 inch strip out of my 8 by 8, I'm left with what, 3 3/4. I didn't want to do that. So I have 2 4-inch strips and I can get more out of my cards. I wanted to create a couple of layouts that I could then duplicate to make a bunch of cards for my mother-in-law. So there's also some glitter cardstock in that kit, and I cut a 1/2 inch strip. That just for you is about 3/8 of an inch. I didn't have to measure it. I just cut it apart where the line was, which is great. So I centered that on the 1/2 inch strip. Centered, lefted, same margins on the top, bottom, and left, and then I just trim off the right. So I'm going to add a little bit of wet glue, and then I like this sort of down and to the right. I think centered is a little too symmetrical. But I love how this turned out. It's quick, it's simple. I can make a ton. There are a bunch of cut aparts in that kit. There are also 5 by 7 card bases, which feels like a lot of card. Sometimes I just like a mini card, so I cut it in half. So I have 3.5 by 5 inches, and I've cut some pattern paper to fit right on there. I'm telling you, the paper in this kit is stunning. This little rose is on the back side of that same paper. So I just used some basic circle dies and cut those out. I'm going to layer it up. And then I was trying to figure out like which way is the bottom of the rose. Where did it look better? I'm still undecided. So you'll have to let me know. Do you like it better on the right or the left? But I'll just let it hang off and then I'll flip it over and use my scissors to trim off any of that excess cardstock. There is a whole stamp set in there. And what I love about this stamp set is that even though it's the Easter kit, nothing in there says Happy Easter. So it's really, really great and versatile for more than just Easter. It's such a short little window for that holiday anyway. So I think it was really well thought out. I've stamped Spring Wishes, Somebody Loves You, Hello. The font is amazing. And I am just going to put those on 1/2 inch strips. Again, I cut these at about 3/8 of an inch. You know I have a 3/8 inch die that I use all the time. So I just grabbed that guy because otherwise I will never get them straight. And I will stack this one up twice so it has a little more weight to it. It feels a little more important. And I'm just trimming off the excess. The Hello is going to get a matte later on in some matte silver. But for now, I'm just leaving it. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with it. We actually have 3 very quick cards, but then card number 4, I didn't even think I was going to make. I was just playing around and I thought, you know what, let's share it. So here's my spring wishes. At this point, I'm putting them all on with removable adhesive. If I give them to my mother-in-law, she knows they're not permanently on there, and then she can swap the sentiments. So she gets the best card with the best sentiment as she's sending them out or handing them out. There are these little gems in there as well, so I added a few. This is going to be a really similar layout to the one we've used before, but I wanted to show you, I used my trimmer on 3 sides to cut the square, and then I just used my detail scissors on the top to follow along. There's a little line like a white border, but then I went around the ears, which I thought was really cute. You could pop that up if you wanted to, but if I'm giving it to my mother-in-law, I don't want her to worry about postage from too much dimension. Then we have Somebody Loves You, but you know what would be great on that card too? If you're like, I don't need a bunny card, I don't need an Easter card at this point. You could turn that little bunny into like a new baby card. I think it would be so cute. The colors are perfect. It's pretty gender neutral. So a few gems. Again, I love that the gems are separated on the little strip, so they each have their own glue. Sometimes you get them and you have to like snip them apart. Not these. They are beautiful and very sticky. There are dies in this kit. So there's this basket full of flowers, and then there's a few small dies that you can layer on top. So I swatched 2 very light colors, right? Rose quartz and water hyacinth. And you can see them, especially the blue, as I'm picking them up on this white die cut. I did off camera glue 2 of them together because it's a wet technique and I didn't want it to get, I don't know, too wet and then we'd have problems. I actually set it aside for the rest of the day to let it dry. Not necessary, but my kids came home. And then I kept working here. I added just some silver pigment ink, and I'm going to heat set that because it got a little dark. I was worried here. So I'll come in next with some white shimmer pigment ink. I wanted to make sure it was dry because I don't want to pick up the silver on my white pad. You can see me checking it, but it just softens that silver and we get this really dreamy basket. You could use it just like that, but I thought let's try to layer up the pieces. There are 2 leaf dies. It's 1 die cuts 2 leaves, and they aren't exactly the same shape and size as all the leaves. There's a good match for a couple of them, but I really wanted lots of layers and textures on here. So I covered up every single leaf, regardless of its size and shape, with one of those 2 leaves. And you know what? You can't tell. This is getting glued onto my card, so I'm not super worried that someone's going to flip it over and be like, oh my gosh, those leaves didn't match. It doesn't matter. So this is like the palest green cardstock, and that I grabbed from my stash. The cardstock I used for the first 3 cards, everything on there came from the kit. But here, I really wanted to keep this sort of very pale pastel dreamy look. One of these flowers has little pieces that you can pop up. So I've flipped it over and I'm just using my little pokey tool to get those popped up for a little extra dimension. And then there's a flower that clearly layers, I think, on top of this one, right? And it's so cute and sort of whimsical. I'm putting a little foam on it. There's going to be dimension on this guy, but I'm all right with it, right? Sometimes that's worth it. So I've added most of the rest of my leaves, and up here, I'm going to put another one of those twirly flowers with the holes in it. Well, there's too much green kind of showing through it. So I used one of the other flower die cuts to just cover up some of that excess green in the background or the leaves that were like tucked under. And then I layered my flower. There are also these beautiful sort of dimensional white flowers. They're shimmery. There's a little like pearl in the middle. And so I'm going to add a bunch of those. There are spots where flowers clearly go. And I thought this was a really great use of them. To keep it from being 2-dimensional flower explosion, there are some very small white flower die cuts that lay much flatter. And so I added a few of those, and then I finish everything up by adding on some of those gems in the middles of the flowers that were just the die cuts. To get my placement right, I like to use a pokey tool. You could use a paper piercer. That's what this one is. So it's really sharp. It's just easier for me to get kind of underneath the gems that way. And then we'll finish up our card. So here I'm actually using some paper from my stash, and I had this piece of blended cardstock. It's a light purple with some dark purple ink coming sort of up from the bottom. That's been sitting on my desk for like a month, so I was so excited to use it. It's great for a quick card Monday. I'm going to add a little bit of 1mm foam and some wet glue to try to get it centered. Y'all, it wasn't centered. It wasn't centered. So I'm going to mess with it here, and then off camera, I'm just going to trim a little bit around the dark purple to straighten out like the crooked edges. It's fine. It's a slightly smaller card. Then a little bit of wet glue on the back here. I'm not worried about getting glue in every tiny little corner. That's okay. I'm just aiming for the big spots and then around the edges to make sure it's really well tacked down. I'm going to have to hold this for a minute. It kept moving on me. So had a conversation with my son, held that down, came back, and we can finish up with our sentiment. We just have this tiny little hello and the little ittiest bittiest border of matte silver cardstock. I've used removable adhesive in case my mother-in-law wants to switch that for something else, a happy spring, a happy Easter. But friends, that finishes up our 4 quick cards. I hope you've learned something today, or at the very least that this was entertaining for you. Check out the Love from Lizzie card kits. The May kit is amazing as well, so I will definitely link to both of those below. Thank you all so much for spending your time with me, and I will see you next time.